All right, so let's talk a little boxing. We got some boxing to talk. And we are going to talk about a few topics here that I think are important. And, there's a few fights that need to happen. And I think that are very important for the sport of boxing. As you know, there is a drought when it comes down to trying to match up good fights. Unfortunately, we can't do that because some of the fighters are being pussies about it. And instead of taking the fights, they go through their managers, they go through their promoters to try to make excuses. And then eventually we just simply don't see any fights. At the end of the day, no matter what they tell you, no fighter, no fighter is forced to take any fight. If they want to fight, they'll take the fight. If they don't want to fight, they're not going to take the fight. It's always the fighter's fault in the end because they can always say, yes, I want the fight. So here, we just want to make sure that we get the best fights, not necessarily going back to the 90s. I would love to see an era where the best fighters fought the best, the most dangerous fighters fought the most dangerous fighters, but unfortunately, we're not in the era anymore. We kind of have to force these fights to actually happen. So to start with, I want to mention this fight, because this is Andy Hiraoka versus Gary Antuanne Russell. Now, Andy Hiraoka was actually ranked number one, and he was unknown to me till I saw him fight against Ismael Barroso. Now, Ismael Barroso, as we all know, had a controversial robbery against Rolando Romero. Rolando Romero won that fight, but the stoppage by Tony Weeks was actually really bad, and it's one of the worst stoppages I've seen. It was clearly a fight that Barroso should have won, but they were basically padding to Rolando Romero to win that fight, and he won that fight. But to be honest, the one who should have won that fight was, no question, Ismael Barroso. But then Ismael Barroso, he fought another British guy. I forgot what his name was. I saw the fight, but he destroyed that guy. Like, he literally destroyed him, right? And one of the boxers that wasn't named as a boogeyman a few years ago was Ismael Barroso. We know that you had boxers like Sandor Martin, which not a lot of fighters wanted to fight. We had Gary Antuanne Russell, which still wasn't a champion. We had also Surreal Matias, who was also ducked too. And Arnold Barbosa, I think he was ducked too. And there was a few fighters that were named as the boogeymans, or, boxers who were just complicated. Nobody wanted to fight them. But Ismael Barroso was most definitely one of those boxers who was tough and nobody wanted to fight, because the dude can actually fight. And I think he beat O'Hara Davis. I think that's who he destroyed. And that, showed that he is a dangerous fighter. Now, I didn't know who Andy Hiraoka was. I saw a few of his fights, but I wasn't too impressed by him. And then Ismael Barroso decided to cross the river and go to Japan. And that's when I really found out how good Andy Hiraoka was. Andy Hiraoka destroyed Ismael Barroso. And Ismael Barroso can box. He is a puncher and a boxer at the same time. He has power and he can box. And the way that Hiraoka destroyed Barroso really shocked me, because I didn't expect Barroso to end up, literally destroyed in that fight. I thought he had a good chance to beat Hiraoka, but Hiraoka just schooled him. I mean, his jab was on point. He was fast. He had really good timing. He could actually move laterally. He could actually also change angles. And he had power too. He had power, because to put down a boxer like Barroso, you have to have considerable power, and Hiraoka was able to do that. So then what happened was that Barroso had the WBA title, the interim one, the regular one, but then they took away the interim title, and then they basically put Hiraoka as the mandatory for the winner in between Russell Jr. and Rayo Valenzuela, right? And that was a great fight, because I've always said that Gary Antuanne Russell is one of the most avoided boxers, especially at 140 pounds. Everybody, like I said, talks about, Sorel Matias and Barbosa was in the name. I think Kenneth Sims Jr. is also a dangerous fighter. He's fighting Oscar Duarte. I think that's going to be a great fight. But Gary Antuanne Russell, for me, was the boogeyman, and Alberto Puello as well in that division. I thought that they were complicated to beat. So Gary Antuanne Russell put an amazing performance against Jose Rayo Valenzuela. I thought he used his jab really well. He was able to cut the ring in a way that, for example, Canelo Alvarez couldn't do against Christian and Billy. And not only that, but he showed boxing skills. When he fought Alberto Puello was like boxing, and I didn't feel like Gary Antuanne Russell was showing his boxing skills. He was basically trying to knock him out, and I think that was one of the problems that Gary Antuanne Russell had in that fight. He could actually, instead of boxing Alberto Puello, he decided to box him, and I think that was a mistake because Alberto Puello knows how to box. So in this fight against Rayo Valenzuela, he just did not allow Rayo Valenzuela to do what he did against Pitbull Cruz, which was to outbox him in a beautiful way. And that made a huge difference. And then that also shows that Gary Antuanne Russell has the metrics and has the ability to change his game and adapt to whatever style is put in front of him, right? So for me, this fight was ordered between Gary Antuanne Russell and Andy Hiraoka back in May. I haven't heard anything because I think the purse bid ended in June. And Andy Hiraoka versus Gary Antuanne Russell is, for me, the best fight that can be made right now in 140 pounds. One of the reasons behind that is because Gary Antuanne Russell is a boxer that Richardson Hitchens or Teofimo Lopez don't want to face. Sorel Matias was the only one willing to face him, and obviously we know that Alberto Puello faced him already. But nobody really wanted to face Gary Antuanne Russell, especially after that performance against Jose Rayo Valenzuela. So he has shown, Gary Antuanne Russell, that not only can he box, but it seems like in unifications, Richardson Hitchens and Teofimo Lopez don't want to actually fight with him. And that is bad news, because if we want to see unification fights, then, we have to watch these fights. We have to see the best fight the best. We have to see champions unify and become undisputed. That should be the goal always, but that's not the case. So that's Gary Antuanne Russell. In the case of Andy Hiraoka, like I said, he destroyed a very dangerous fighter in Ismael Barroso, but I really don't know where he really is at this point. I don't know where Russell and or let's say Hiraoka is at this point. I don't know if Hiraoka is a boogeyman. I mean, to me he is, obviously, but I don't know if that was a one-hit wonder. Was it like Brian Mendoza beating Sebastian Fundora? Was it like Jeff Horn beating Manny Pacquiao? Was it just a good day and then he just disappears? I don't know. This happens. It happens. So I don't know where Andy Hiraoka really is. What I do know is what he did to Barroso, right? So I think this will be a very explosive fight between Gary Antuanne Russell and Andy Hiraoka. And I think the winner of that fight could put themselves as the most dangerous fighter in that division with Sorel Matias, because Sorel Matias beat Alberto Puello, and I had Alberto Puello as the boogeyman of all the belt holders. Right now, obviously, I think Richardson Hitchens has the style to beat any of these boxers. I think he has good technique, and I think he can beat them. But you can't beat anybody you're not fighting, and acting like a pussy, not trying to make these fights, that's already a no-no for me. So maybe he doesn't believe he can fight these sort of boxers. I mean, he was literally the mandatory for Sorel Matias, but he didn't want to go through the IBF because of a rehydration clause. We all know that when you fight with the IBF, the day of the fight, you can only rehydrate like 10 pounds. So maybe that was the case, but either or, He did fight uh, Liam Paro and with the IBF. So I'm a little bit confused about that, and maybe he just didn't want to fight Surreal Matias. I don't really know. Now he did beat Liam Paro, and we all know that Liam Paro beat Surreal Matias, but triangle logic in boxing doesn't really work, and that's one of the problems with today's fans. They think that you have to be a Fleming with a junior to you have to beat everybody, and that shows that you can beat every style just by beating one boxer or two boxers, and that. But that's not how it really works, right? Now it's interesting because, like I said, the winner of this fight, I think they will place themselves in a very dangerous, as a very dangerous belt holder. And not only that, but I think the only one, if any Hiraoka beats Gary Antuanne Russell, I think that nobody is going to want to unify against it except for Surreal Matias or Surreal Matias. I think he's the only one who be willing to do so, especially if he were to knock out Gary Antuanne Russell. That would pretty much guarantee that Andy Hiraoka is literally by himself waiting to unify. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of boxers who have the balls to unify in today's generation. Now, if Gary Antuanne Russell beats Andy Hiraoka, let's say he destroys him, right? We're going to have the same problem. Richards and Hitchens already fought Gary Antuanne Russell in the amateurs and lost. Teofimo Lopez is not really trying to offer Gary Antuanne Russell any fights, and we're going to talk about Teofimo Lopez in a second. So in reality, the winner of that fight between Hiraoka or Gary Antuanne Russell is pretty much going to, be stuck in that and as a belt holder, because I don't think a lot of the boxers are going to unify with him, except for maybe the WBC holder. Now, also, it will be interesting because I don't know what the negotiations are like right now. I do know that they were negotiating, but for some reason or another, it seems like the brother, Gary Russell, what I heard, is he wants to fight the winner, or he wanted to fight the winner between Surreal Matias and Alberto Puello, which is understandable because it is for unification. Unifications are more important than defenses, right? But if he doesn't get that fight, and we already know that Surreal Matias is facing Dalton Smith, then now the issue is, well, who are you going to fight? And I'm of the conviction, and I'm an old school type of a fan, right? I want to see the best fight the best. I want to see the most dangerous fighters fight the most dangerous opposition. And I think he obviously needs to take Hiraoka. So I don't know, maybe if it comes down to the purse, maybe, maybe the purse or the purse bid, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if they're going to fight in the United States or they're going to fight in Japan. But if he cannot make a unification bout and Gary Antuanne Russell says, well, I want Hiraoka to fight in the United States, and Hiraoka refuses and says, well, I want to fight in Japan, at that point, I would have to say that Gary Antuanne Russell has the upper hand because he is the champion, and Hiraoka should travel to the United States and fight. Now, if Hiraoka is saying, well, I'll pay you way more money than, unification with Matias or any of the other champions. I mean, the Japanese do produce their own pay-per-views. They really don't need other people or other countries to go to other countries. They're like the British. They can actually stay in England and produce their own pay-per-view counts. The Australians can do the same, but mostly the Japanese and British, they don't need to go and travel to the United States and make pay-per-view buys, right? So if he offers him a good amount of money and Gary Antuanne Russell decides to fight, a low or below average boxer at this point, then, I will have to say that it's a bad game. It's bad business for Russell, because if he beats Hiraoka, he's definitely beating a top dangerous fighter, and fighting him is not the same as fighting, for example, I don't know, just putting Elvis Rodriguez, right? I'm nothing against Elvis Rodriguez, but I don't see him at the same caliber. So that's just my opinion on this subject. I hope this fight is made, and I really do hope that these boxers start to unify, because it is important for the sport of boxing. But I think it will be fight of the year if these two fight. I think styles make fights, and these two are explosive. These two can brawl when they need to. They can box, and they have speed, and they have good foot placement, especially when they're cutting angles. So they can literally do everything in that ring, and they have power. So that equalizer could end up knocking one of these boxers out. But I'm not going to give my prediction till we get closer to the fight. All right, so let's talk about the next topic here because I do want to cover this one. Um, all right, so if you don't follow me in Spanish, no problem. I've, for the most part, and I've done this. I've done this for years, but I've always gave Teofimo Lopez bad publicity, and the reason why is because I really do believe he is a pussy. Okay, and I hate to say that because I shouldn't be calling any fighter a pussy, but he is a pussy. Okay, when you have the opportunity to fight Devin Haney 3 times, and you basically are, you basically are cloud chasing and saying that you want to fight Terrence Crawford, which obviously I knew that was a bunch of baloney. But when you're saying that sort of shit, and then you're not even able to fight Devin Haney, and you're asking for 10 million when he was 135 pounds, he asked for 10 million. He only had the franchise belt at that time. He was never really undisputed. So, Teofimo Lopez was never undisputed. But then you dug Devin Haney at 140 pounds. You had a chance to make the fight after Josh Taylor. You don't want it. And then he moves up to 100 and, he gets an offer from Turki Al-Sheikh, a good offer apparently. And he also rejects that offer and doesn't want to fight Devin Haney. So, to me, you're scared of losing against Devin Haney, right? Once he lost against George Kambosos Jr., I think he became more like Canelo Alvarez, like a boxer or a Gervonta Davis. He's not willing to take that many risks anymore, okay? I think he's scared of losing, and that's why he's taking the Campa fights. He was taking the Steve Claggett fights. He was taking the Jermaine Ortiz fight, which made no sense. I mean, he was just moving up in weight, and suddenly you want to fight Jermaine Ortiz. I mean, that's weird. He did fight Sandor Martin, and Sandor Martin did beat Mikey Garcia. But even if you analyze those fights, and I do give him credit for George Kambosos, not for George Kambosos Jr., but for Arnold Barboza. I think that was a good fight. I think he did what he had to do. But he did make him wait for a long time. But the fight with Jermaine Ortiz and the fight with Sandor Martin could have really gone either way. That fight, Teofimo Lopez, in my opinion, I thought that he lost both fights. Now, the judges were in his favor, in his corner those nights, and they kind of helped him out to only have the one loss at this point, right, in his record. But I think that after his experience with George Kambosos Jr., and then after trying to face opposition that he thought was a cherry pick, like Sandor Martin and Jermaine Ortiz, which I think he thought that he was going to knock out, I think he's even more scared now of trying to face boxers that are more dangerous, or at least that can offer certain technical qualities that he himself does not actually really offer, right? And I think that he is a good boxer. I think he can box, but you ducking every unification fight in the book. You didn't want to fight Subriel Matias at one point. I understand Rolly is your friend when he had the belt, but you didn't want to unify against him. You were talking shit about Regis Prograis, but never want to fight Regis Prograis. You didn't want to fight Devin Haney. Ryan Garcia, which I'm not a fan of. He's a dope head. He offered you a contract to actually fight, and you didn't want that fight either. So now, you literally ducked the entire 140-pound division, except for Arnold Barboza, because it was enforced on you. Otherwise, they were going to take the only belt you have, right? And that's one of the problems with Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez is a good boxer, but he doesn't believe that he could beat many of the 140 pounders that are in his division. He definitely does not believe that he can beat Devin Haney. I think at this point, he is in a lose-lose situation if he doesn't make an appropriate choice. And he's already lost in my book in many different ways because he's not risking. He's taking the pussy side. He's taking the Canelo side. He's taking the Gervonta side, which is basically to minimize risk and try to get cherry pick opponents that would eventually or could eventually beat you. And you're not going to get recognition. You're going to give them the recognition. And they're going to say, wow, this guy beat you, but you weren't that good. So I think Teofimo Lopez is headed in that direction. He's probably going to choose another cherry. Let's say he were to choose the winner of Oscar Duarte versus Kenneth Sims Jr. because he doesn't want to face the rest of the champions because he's afraid of them. Well, that cherry could go wrong because, you know, the winner of that fight to me is going to be a dangerous fighter. I think Kenneth Sims Jr. is a great boxer. I think he's really good, actually. I think Oscar Duarte can, well, at least for his power right now, is looking good. But if Teofimo Lopez doesn't take the good fights, eventually he's going to lose against a boxer that we don't really know. And this is what happens over and over again. We saw with Jaime Munguia. He took a cherry called Surase, and Surase knocked his ass out clean. Like, he fucked them up. And Surase is not known for his power, but he destroyed Jaime Munguia, right? So this is the problem. Now, Shakur Stevenson and Teofimo Lopez got in a scrimmage there in X, and Shakur Stevenson was like, well, you know, we can fight. We can make this fight happen. You know, just sign the contract. Let's fight. And Teofimo Lopez, instead of saying like, well, you know, yeah, okay, let's take the fight. Let's make this shit happen. Like, which, like, for example, if you asked that to Deontay Wilder, he would have been like, yeah, let's just take the fight. You say that to a boxer, like, for example, Stephen Fulton, he'll take the fight. He's a warrior. He'll fight anybody. But his response was like, yeah, okay, you know, whatever. Like, it was just some pussy excuse. And then he ends up with, watch out what you wish for. Well, if that's going to be your response, bro, then you are a fucking pussy, because you should have responded, I'll send you the contract ASAP. I'm sending it to you right now, DHL, motherfucker. Sign the contract. You can do that. So, I mean, if you dug that many fighters and now you have a boxer coming from 135 pounds, which, you know, is very technical, like Shakur Stevenson. Oh, by the way, Shakur also dug Devin Haney. But let's say now you have the opportunity to, you know, fight the boxer who dug Devin Haney and who Lomachenko also dug, because Lomachenko did not want Shakur Stevenson. Then that kind of gives you some redeeming power in the fact that most people think that you're a pussy, right? But not looking for that fight, not pushing for that fight, not talking about that fight, and definitely not saying in front of everybody, hey, yeah, let's get this shit going, you know, I'll send you the contract, let's fight. That only shows me what I always thought about you. And I always thought of Teofimo Lopez after the fight he had with Vasyl Lomachenko, especially with what I saw with Devin Haney, that this guy was going to be a pussy. And here we are. Now everybody thinks he's a pussy. I've been saying this in my channel and the Spanish channel for over 5 years, that I really believe this guy's a pussy. And finally, it came across everybody's mind that Teofimo Lopez is a big pussy. He does not want to take the fights. The tough fights he does not want to take. And he is skillful, but those skills don't mean anything if you're not taking the toughest opposition. Most fights should be a 50-50 fight. As if you're a boxing fan, that's what the type of fights you want to see. You want to see a 50-50 fight, a 45-55 fight, no more than that, because you don't know who's going to win, and those are the best fights. Teofimo Lopez, every time he fights, he's the favorite, and that just shows the type of pussy that he is. So nothing new with Teofimo Lopez. Hopefully he'll grow a pair of balls one day and he actually takes the good fights. But at his age, and just looking at this common trend of ducking dangerous fights, I think that's already attached in his pussy deep down inside. And I think that unfortunately, there's a lot of leakage there, and there's just nothing nobody can do, because if you become addicted to ducking fights, right? And that's one of the problems with boxing today. We have a lot of people who duck fights and they become addicted to ducking, because once you duck once, then, well, I could do it again, and then I do it again, and then you start sniffing your own addiction. I mean, you start sniffing that shit, and then it's when you know that these boxers are afraid. So this is the case with Teofimo Lopez. I honestly believe that Shakur Stevenson will beat the shit out of him. I'm not saying that Teofimo is not a good boxer. He is. But I think Shakur Stevenson showed levels to his game. For example, when Cepeda was trying to catch Shakur Stevenson stood in the pocket and just basically showed how good defensively he is. He stayed in a fixed position, just making Cepeda just not able to hit the target well. He was literally showcasing shoulder roll skills that we haven't seen since Floyd Mayweather Jr., and that kind of shows the pedigree of Shakur Stevenson. When Teofimo Lopez fought Steve Claggett, Steve Claggett was another Cepeda. In fact, I think Steve Claggett is a little bit more skillful than Cepeda, to be honest. He does things a little bit better. He knows how to use his lack of power for his advantage. It's just he can't fight certain styles and win, because that's one of the problems with Canadian boxers. But when Teofimo fought him, Teofimo was basically boxing backwards, and he didn't showcase that level of skills where he says, okay, I'm going to stay here and you're going to try to hit me, and I'm going to showcase my skills, right? I'm going to try to be George Benton. I'm going to try to be James Toney. He didn't do that. So to me, when Teofimo Lopez saw what Shakur did against Cepeda, I think he became envious. And I think that's when all this beef started between Shakur Stevenson and Teofimo Lopez, which was not it was not far after the fight he had Shakur with Cepeda. So that's what I think. I think Teofimo Lopez just doesn't believe he can beat Shakur Stevenson. And to be honest with you, I think most people would put Shakur Stevenson as favorite against Teofimo Lopez. All right, so let's see here real quick, and let's head on to this again, and let's talk about this other fight. And let's see over here, if you have any questions, you can always put it in the chat, but if not, we'll go to Angelo or Shushu Carrington, because I do want to talk about that right now. So yeah, talk about that. All right. So let's go here real quick. Let's talk about this fight, because I think it's a very interesting fight. Let's go here. If you have any questions, y'all can put it in the chat. Try to do my best to answer them. And then we move forward here. Okay, so we saw the fight that Shushu Carrington had, which was a decent fight. Nothing, I didn't think it was anything crazy. I think he did what he had to do. But his opponent, in my opinion, was okay. I forgot his name, but I didn't really, I mean, he had power. But other than that, I think he was a tailor-made opponent for Shushu Carrington. Now, there's a lot of questions with Carrington. He has the entering title right now. And one of the questions is, how good is he really, right? And that's something I really don't know at this point. I do want to see him against a caliber opponent, I think it will be good for him in his career to take a good fight. Now, he is being dabbling with Rafael Espinosa, the WBO champion. He's also trying to dabble with Stephon Fulton, WBC champion. But Stephon Fulton at this point is looking at Oshaki Foster for a possible fight against them. And then obviously there's Nick Ball, the WBA holder. But I don't know if Nick Ball has a fight already or he does not have a fight. If he does not have a fight, I think he should unify with Bruce Carrington. Now, one of the things that doesn't really help out Carrington is that right now he doesn't actually hold the real belt. He holds the interim belt. And that's a little bit of a problem, especially with interim belts, because it's not the real belt. So it's not really unification. I mean, it is a unification, but it's like a junior unification. And it's never made sense to me why they make these interim belts. This should just be one belt, period. You should not put any interim belts because there's no such thing as gold and gold junior. You know, it's just gold or silver. But if you have gold, you have gold. You don't have gold junior. Okay, that just makes no sense. You just have gold. You don't have interim gold. You know, that's how it should be. But that's just me being a boxing fanatic here. Okay, so Stephon Fulton will be a great fight, and I think Stephon Fulton would definitely take that fight. But I don't think that's going to happen. Now, obviously, the most dangerous fighter in that division, and it has to do mostly because of his style, is Rafael Espinosa. I think he's the Sebastian Fundora in 126 pounds. I think he is the guy to beat in that division. He's not undisputed, so we don't know if he's truly the best or he's not. There can only be one champion per division. But what I can say about him is that when he fought the Cuban guy, I thought that he did pretty well against that Cuban fighter. I think he did pretty well. And obviously, they didn't want to give him a lot of credit. They were basically saying that, well, he was hugging and doing all these different things that casuals say, or he was, getting elbowed. But when you're fighting, a boxer of the size of Espinosa, you're going to get hit by an elbow. You will probably get hit with bone because he's just a bigger, taller fighter, right? So fighting Rafael Espinosa will probably Bruce Carrington's most difficult fight, and it has to do because he's tall, he's lengthy, and also he's shown that he can actually box. Most Mexican fighters that come from Mexico, if you're born in America, I don't consider you Mexican, I consider you American. You're a Latino American, but you're not really a Mexican. But most of the fighters that fought Rafael Espinosa, normally he just made it a brawl. But when he fought Robesi Ramirez, the Cuban, he actually was successful enough to actually box against him. And I think that made him show a new dimension to his arsenal. And I think that's the same thing that we saw with Fulton when he actually boxed the first fight with Tim Tszyu. He showed that he has the boxing arsenal, right? And that's what makes him even more dangerous, right? Because how do you catch, a tall, lengthy fighter who's just throwing the jab and, his arm length is wide and it's just hard to catch. You have to make 2 steps forward when he makes 1 step backwards. So it's just difficult. The timing is different. So I think Bruce Carrington would definitely not be the favorite against Rafael Espinosa. So another problem is that Rafael Espinosa, once again, might be looking for a unification fight without an interim title. And that's a little bit of the issue with the WBC right now. Technically, it should be Stephon Fulton versus Rafael Espinosa. But Fulton right now might be going or moving up to a new weight class. So we'll see what happens. Plus, there's also rumor that Rafael Espinosa might be actually fighting Navarrete, moving up to 130 pounds. I hope that fight doesn't happen, but, we'll see. The other option will be Nick Ball. Now, Nick Ball, he is a good fighter. He fought Raymond Ford, and he showed he can box. I think that will be a great fight with Nick Ball. But it seems to me like Nick Ball is not really up to unifications. I've seen him very quiet. I have not seen him try to unify with different champions there. And I think he's good, but I also think that there are some boxers over there that could actually really beat him. And Rafael Espinosa being one of them. I think Stefan Fulton will beat him as well. And then Angelo Leo, there's a huge chance that, I put Angelo Leo favorite against Nick Ball myself. So I like Angelo. He's from my state, so I got to support him. But he's a good boxer, though, outside of that. So to me, the fight that should happen would be Bruce Carrington versus Angelo Leo. I think that's the fight, in my opinion, that makes more sense. Angelo just fought in Japan, and I think it will be great for him to actually take um, this fight, this unification fight. He is actually pretty skillful. He's one of the most skillful Latinos in the United States right now. So obviously, we got some skillful fighters in general. But as far as being Latino and knowing how to box, there's very few of them. Angelo is definitely one of them. Bam is another one. You also have Real Murataya. It looks like he can box, but right now he's ducking Andy Cruz. So there are some boxers who can box. And, David Benavidez can box sometimes if he needs to. But Angelo Leo is a really good boxer. He doesn't have a lot of power, but he can outbox you. I think that will be a great fight between Angelo Leo and Shushu Carrington. I think that's the fight that would make more sense in my opinion, because both don't have a lot of power, and I think this will be the test that Bruce Carrington needs in order to really showcase whether he is technically that good. This will really push him to the level to elite level, right? And I think Angelo will do that for Shushu Carrington. So I really believe this is the fight to be made, and I would love to see a unification bout between the two of them. I think it will be great for the sport of boxing and also for the division as well. It's been a long time since there's been an undisputed champion in that belt, and somebody's going to have to break the hymen of that of that division. All right, so that's all I had for y'all. Give us a like, subscribe, and become part of our community here in Golden Era. We're building our channel here in English, and just become part of the community, and we'll see you in the next video. All right, peace out, into the next.